Right. This is an interesting thing to talk about, because the when I first started with these oil pastels, it was, the straight response stuff. It's just draw in the moment, like with the charcoal. You'll see me doing the charcoal. I'll do a charcoal now. This was the same. This was just so happened I restricted the colours because I didn't have any more than these colours, so I didn't have enough to make a realistic attempt. And then as I got more a different set of pastels, I tried more realistic attempts, and fairly miserably, obviously. But this was where we ignited everything, I suppose. And I've got more fondness for this than I have, as a genuine response from me, than I have with something like that, which is this is probably one of the reasons I talk about this being drawn towards realism and drawn towards replication, because you are inevitably. I mean, I am. There's still a draw towards realism, regardless of my mark making, and so it struck me that as an illustrator, and seeing quite a few artists do this, you can construct a style. I don't believe that you should. I mean, there's worlds apart, between this kind of thing and this kind of thing, and then this kind of thing. It's just these are my responses in a way, except for this one. Whereas this one is a constructed and deliberate response, and it involves images that are taken into Photoshop and then distressed and just exaggerated, and the hues messed around with it, all kinds of things, to create a style, which is often what an illustrator would do, and you often see artists doing that. And once they've mastered the manipulation side of it, there is one particular artist I'm thinking of, but I can't really tell you who he is, and he will construct the style, and the thing then becomes all about the style. Now you can keep replicating that, but it's not a response. It's not that, right? Which is in the moment me responding regardless of how it turns out. This is deliberate style, and this is for me the major difference between people that would just sit down with a pencil or sit down with crayons or whatever and paint and just make a representation. The dilemma really is that people will always inevitably sit in front of somebody and rarely paint like that. That is the thing. The dilemma is that when you sit in front of somebody, you end up making realistic attempt. Pencil, graphite, charcoal, even monochrome. Rarely do you see people that will do a stylized representation. Invariably, it's just about honing the drawing skills, and so this is the thing. I always think that styles are something that arrive. You know, if you want a style. I don't want a style, but if you want a style, I think they are something that just evolve from your response to things. But you can construct a style. You can say, right, this is what I did with this. I'm going to take it in Photoshop. I'm going to mess around with it. I'm going to sort out all the levels. I'm going to just play with the color map and just see what happens. And then when I've arrived at an image, invariably that image it looks like this, more or less, although it looks like that. It's what it looks like. And we did one last night, very like a series of these images of young girls at pop concert or whatever. They're a bit out of focus. Just there's a certain kind of light about them, and then I will then just again with my filter start to break it down even further. One of the things that I did try to do with this, and it was a conclusion of a discussion I had yesterday, was that I'd use colours that weren't the right colours, purples, and so I wasn't trying to make a replication. You know, I wasn't trying to make something of a photographic attempt. You know what I mean? So that was probably the one of the key things when it came to doing it. It was still in this kind of representative state, but I just, you know, was quite in the moment with it. So there was a little bit of response. There was a little bit of response to it, you know, a kind of shape and pattern kind of recognition, and using colours that that weren't right, but tonally were right. So that was it. I'm going to do another one of these today. As I said, it's a construction thing, so it doesn't just, I don't just do it straight away. I have to go through Photoshop and mess about with it, and then end up at a place where I think that, yeah, that's a great image, and then I paint or draw, whatever you call working with oil pastels. I don't know, but I'll do that. So I'll do another one today, and as a kind of in fact, what I might do is I'm going to do it in stages, and I'll show you what I do then. So I can't show you the screen, the Photoshop screen, but I can show you the images. I'll do that. I'll copy the files, and then I'll do a step-by-step thing. I can't do it on here, and I'll show you the conclusion on here, but I'll point you to where you'll see the stages of this development. Now, these images, I say, we did one last night in the lesson. That was one in the lesson last night. You can see how this is like, it's the shape identification thing. You know, you can see how that is in the same vein as that. You can see how you could put color onto that one and do the same thing with that one. So I think probably, going back to the response thing, I think probably the images will trigger a response, will trigger a certain style as well. So the whole thing is, so there is still that responsive thing going on. It's just that I'm constructing a lot of how it's going to end up in the end, you know, in the final piece. Which, like I say, there are quite a few artists that do that kind of thing. Anyway, so I'm going to draw this girl, and I've kind of covered the purpose of this video in what I've just talked about. I think that that's probably something that not many people will talk about. They will, you know, in terms of this, it's just, well, it's just drawing a face, and I've just seen somebody going, no, you know what I mean? I've done seen all that. Well, that's kind of, yeah, all right, just circles and ellipses and things. But a different trajectory is when it's about response. So, and if that response that results in a particular style, that's even better. It's even better. I think the you know, the drawing aspect of it, getting things in the right place, yeah, that's kind of important to some. It's not to others. I think that, you know, this doesn't have to be a realistic face. You know, it just so happens that my realism, you know, I can't really, it's something that I do, so it's always going to be part of the finish. But this doesn't necessarily have to be a realistic image. You could see that being a more sort of cubist kind of thing if you wanted it to be a genre of some kind. But I think there's an element of, so there's, for me, when it goes into Photoshop, well, first of all, there's a choice of subject, and then there's so there's my response to it. So when I then take it in Photoshop, messing about with the levels and whatever, then there is all that aesthetic choice thing that's going on with it. So there is still some of my response in that. It's not just an illustrator's construction. So, but so that's you know, if you're going to do that kind of thing, if you're going to deliberately create some kind of style, I think you've got to do it with an open mind rather than it being a, you know, just as you say with drawing, you can't come to it and or come to that and think, oh, it's going to look like this. I think you've got to just play, because that's the thing. When you just stick it in Photoshop and start, as I say, moving the levels around, and you'll just see things happening. And that's kind of, it's a bit like this. It's still the response and you know, aesthetic judgment. It's still all the same thing. It's just that you're making something deliberately pleasing, based on your own, obviously, on your own aesthetic judgment, but you're still constructing the thing. Whereas I think that, you know, the greats, you know, the Picassos and so on, their styles were just an evolution of them. To do it like I've done it is not, it's not the right way to do it. I wouldn't think it'd be the right way to do it. I'd say that it has to evolve as part of you. I think there's a couple of guys that I was thinking of, and there was one in particular that has a style. I mean, his work is astounding. Watercolorist guy, his work is astounding. And I think looking at the images, I would say that they are constructed images, because there's so much in the, you know, in the composition that it's not in the moment, unless you were to, you know, and back in the day when they used to stage scenes, you know, the Norman Rockwell type of thing, or something more classical. There's got to be, you know, looking at his work, there's got to be some computer aided development in it, because it's the constructions are too specific, and they're always similar. They're always, they have the same kind of feel. But as I said, that's illustrators do that. You know, that's what they would do. They would build a scene. Norman Rockwell build a scene, and then paint it, which is a million miles away from sitting down in front of somebody and just painting them. You know, I mean, you might end up with a stylized version. There's a guy called Goldbrush and Goodbrush, and I don't know why I call it Goldbrush. It's like Goldrush. He I mean, he's a concept artist, and he's incredible. It's amazing style, amazing skill. But he paints watercolors, and he goes to life classes and whatever. And you look at some of the work he does, and it's got that in it. You know, he's doing it live. Partly because it's just him painting, but as a consequence, things like this happen. And I mean, that's proper skill. That's like, you know, years and years of doing it, you know. But so it's possible, and I've seen people in life classes do the similar kind of thing, and it's not as constructed, not as contrived as what I did. It's just a consequence of them, you know. So maybe arriving at a style rather than it being constructed is the best way to get there, rather than dependent. Although, you know, as there's been many times, it's more than one way to skin a cat. So if constructing it in Photoshop and then making a piece of work from that, then is the way to do it, then do it that way. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it that way. I think the biggest development with the oil pastels was this decision not to use colours that were representative and just use colours that weren't, deliberately use colours that weren't, and the way it forced me to think differently. So it was about shape and tone. And I mean, it's always about shape and tone, but in monochrome, it's a lot easier. I think one thing that I'm pleased about that with that is and it's you know, it's a reoccurring thing for me, is the removal of the realism thing, the removal of it having to be photorealistic, and that it's inevitable if you use colours that aren't realistic colours, you know, flesh tone colours. As soon as you get away from that, you're in a different world. It's contemporary. It's more now, you know. The rest of it is, as you can see, and there's some amazing artists out there, but there's so many locked into tradition of doing this, you know, of doing portraits. So many of them, and they have a kind of, I mean, it's perpetuated by galleries and things. The exhibition, National Portrait Exhibition in the UK. There are some contemporary in there, but there's predominantly, from what I've seen, let's say that from what I've seen, realism and traditional realism is the dominant. They have another one. I think it was called CCPD or something. I can't remember. I don't know who that is. Oh, if it's connected, it may be connected to the National Guard. I don't know. But anyway, they say that is more contemporary, and it is from what I've seen. But there's a heck of a lot of people that just doing traditional stuff that's not quite, or illustrators. There's a lot of illustrators in that one. But I think the illustrators, like that, is an illustration as far as I can see. That's an illustration. So, you know, it's deliberate. You know what I mean? It looks like Michael Jackson, doesn't it? But it's that deliberateness that that I think tells, you know, them apart. It's more. I don't know whether or not the consideration is a good thing anyway, but maybe it is. But I think it's because I like the idea that in being in the moment, this is how I responded. I like that. I like that. It might be ugly at the end of it, you know, not a good response, but I like the idea of it being that rather than it being a construction or whatever, a contrivance. I think that's probably the worst kind. I mean, I'm verging on that with the oil pastel I just showed you. I'm verging on the contrivance because one of the things about the more contemporary approach is that people consider the decorative value. You know, it's the design thing, and I mean, it was my training to be a designer, so I can't get away from that, and I try to. I think that's probably one of those things that I didn't want to get back to. I didn't want to get back to the making it pretty thing. To me, it's not decorative. I don't want it to be decorative. So, because that undermines everything. You know, sort of the classic doesn't match the curtains thing. I don't want to get anywhere near that. There's blue in the fabric on the sofa, so I'm looking for blue in the painting. You know, that's just not at all where I want to be. Which is probably why I've been forever just focusing on drawing faces, you know, because and just drawing faces, not trying to make construction like the oil pastel. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think that a lot of people who come to making portraits might well think that it is a bit of a construction. You know, I think the fact that you see people constructing a scene, for instance, might imply that. I think mostly the people that do, you know, someone stand in front of them and paint them, then none of that's about construction really. And those that have a style, have a proper style, as opposed to what I've done, it's inevitable they'll do it in a particular way, you know, and that's years and years of doing it and seeing in a particular way. So, but as I said, that's a different thing. Then you get the more, let's say, the illustrators. You see them on here. There's loads of them on here that do there's a guy in Domestica, which is what I was looking at yesterday. I thought, well, that's a constructive style, and he's an illustrator, but he's doing contemporary portraiture. That's what it calls it. And it is that. It's exactly that. I don't think you could do it without computers, though. I mean, I think back in the day, I think, you know, I tell a lie. I had to do some packaging for, I think it was Asda, and they wanted me. I should dig it out. They wanted me to do that kind of thing in a much more simplistic form of fruit and veg. And was it somebody Fowler? It wasn't Asda. It was some packaging. It was some livery on the side of a big wagon. And I did that kind of thing, sort of the flat colours and things, all done in gouache. I remember at the time doing it. It's a long time ago, but so without computers, so it's possible. It just speeds things up, you know, to especially the experimental side of things. So running it through, you know, different altering the levels on things and the colour map, and just seeing how it flashes through. That, and then making the consideration. So in a way, I'm creating the work right there, and then executing it with oil pastel. The difference being that if it remained, and people would do it on a paint program, something like the thing they get on an iPad, and they would do it in that, and it'd still justifiably be a work of art. But I think for me, it was using the oils, the oil pastels, was the ultimate goal. I wanted to use them to do it, and it gave it a kind of more responsive feel. You know, the way that the lines aren't quite in Photoshop, and if I'd done it in a paint program, the lines would have been specifically hard, but this has got texture, it's got everything going on about it. None of it would have happened. Well, some of it would have happened because you can mimic texture in these programs, but at the same time, I don't think I would have got the sort of tactile quality that I've got with that using a computer. But like I say, it's some people would leave it at that point. You know, at the computer stage. But as I said, I did do that kind of thing many moons ago, and without the aid of computers. So some of what I've done without drawing is my, you know, direct response sort of thing. But, I'm kind of doing it on this as well, not necessarily deliberate, but it's the image. So the image, in a way, in the first instance with the other one, was part of the reasoning, you know, the decision to go that route. So, and I'm doing, as I said, I'm doing it with this. So, seeing the shapes, you know. I think the basic platform, though the platform for this always has to be your observation response. I was going to say drawing, but observation response is, for me, drawing, and whether or not it manifests in some accuracy or not is kind of irrelevant. But if your drawing is honest and true, a lot of people attempt to draw realistically when perhaps realism is not their thing, you know, and it shows that, and they'll struggle with it to make it look realistic, and it doesn't have that honesty about it. You know, I've just seen someone now who's struggling with oil painting, and they've been on a course, and it's like, I once saw the thing about, you know, the Florence schools where you don't touch colour for a year and all that, and at the time I thought that's a bit daft, but for that genre of painting, I think it's kind of it's required and inevitable, because I don't think you can, without being honest and true to your response, your mark making, that you can then go to the next level. You know, the production of a painting, for instance, it doesn't necessarily have to be that, but I think you have to be under, you know, sort of true to yourself, or know yourself, whatever it is that you're doing. And if it's for me, if it's based in your emotion response, you're going to be pretty safe in the way that it turns out. It's going to be honest and true. That's the thing. Whereas if it's based in an idea of production, then it's going to become all about the production, and it's also going to fail and be just a poor imitation kind of thing. But whilst ever it's you and your truth, it's always going to work. And that, as I say, that's kind of where I think I struggle to get it across. You know, and it's this. It isn't just about drawing. It isn't just about the mechanical side of things. It can't be, can it? It can't just be about that. Otherwise, AI could do it. Oh, hang on a minute. Yeah. So, as I said, it's one of the things I would say about the computer thing is that it kind of doesn't matter what you've got in your hand, you know, the tools you're using, whether it's a computer, whether it's a piece of charcoal or whatever. It doesn't matter. They're all part of your process. They're all part of your response. But as I said, it's I think style is it should be something that comes to you rather than you looking for it, you know, or trying to replicate it. And will help you find your style, people say on these courses. I think having the right mindset, you will always find your style. It's just people think that it's a contrivance of some kind, and I've just proved that it is. You know, in that kind of way, that it's possible to contrive a style. Having said that, I will be doing another one of those, as I said, and just to and take pictures of the process so that people understand about the constructed style. In a way, I think it's because I was an illustrator. because I used to illustrate in so many different styles. It was a pre-computer, but the Grant Enlarger and the photocopier that could enlarge and reduce was my best friend. I was married to the Grant Enlarger which is a big like bellows camera thing that you could stick things underneath and trace over. So I was forever in the this we only had one in the studio, and I remember the scuffles that occurred because people would queue up. It's a bit like the toilet. People would queue up outside wanting to use it, and then when the photocopier came, I was the one that bought the copier for the studio. It was had to be an A3 copier. It had to reduce and enlarge, and that was the requirements. And the gaffers wanted it to be cheap. You know what I mean? Cheap and cheap per copy as well. But as I said, that kind of changed everything for us. The facility to enlarge and reduce, and that, as I said, is part of the. It was part of the process that we were, it was part of the art, if you like. We were illustrators, so I was an illustrator. The other guys were just designers. I was that as well, but we used the technology, and I've always kind of, that's why I got into developing, into databases, because I always kind of been fascinated by technology, whether it was a ZX Spectrum in the early days when I used to program those little ping and pong games, and through to major databases for Toyota, so it was, I've always been into technology in that respect, although I hate technology because I think it's stupid. It could never work fast enough for me. It's a bit better now with AI, but back in the day it was stupid, and waiting around. Oh no, I want to be able to do this. I didn't do that. All right, fair enough. And those were the Apple machines. That's why I didn't really favour the Apples, even though they put people out of business, and because they were such great graphic tools, they put typesetters out of business. And my friend committed suicide, who ran a typesetting company, because it just went. There was no business. He inherited it from his dad, and then it was hot metal when he first got it, and then it moved into digital or analog processing. It was film, and they used, and then the computers came and basically wiped him out. So poor lad took his life. But anyway, as I said, technology has always been something I've embraced, but with a sense of irreverence to it. I don't really think it's like with the AI thing. I don't really think it's smarter or cleverer than me, which people will tell you it is, but it's not. You or me, and we're running headlong into an era of more stupidity. I think the problem with computers is that they make people stupid. That's it. They always have. But it's maybe, and it also gives a voice to the stupid. That's the other thing. So you'll see that, and just go and look on LinkedIn. That's all I'll say. But you'll see a lot of it on here. Maybe that's given me a voice, and that in a way I've just proved a point. Anyway. You can see a lot of the shape thing going on there. I mean, this is the subject. You can see it, can't you? You can see how there's colours in that I've just wrapped up the volume, and then there's not a lot of shadow on her face, but there was on this one, and I've just ramped it all up, and you can see it there. What's happened with it, and then of course I'm drawing those shapes now. And in the lesson last night, doing the same thing. Same kind of image, so doing the same thing, it's just identifying the shapes. I'm working on the shapes, and you can see why. This was yesterday morning. I don't know if you saw this, a little bit more realistic, But you can see why I kind of don't talk about the circles and ellipses and all that kind of stuff and the construction outside of things, because it's just the response. It's just the response and the response to these shapes and the relationship with these shapes, and it's so much easier to see like this than it is to try and work out the school shape and all the rest of it. And since it's just about response for me, just about the ease of response, I don't want to get into all that stuff. Probably what I see people do it, I saw a guy this morning do it, and the things look so static, and mannequin-esque. So I don't, it's always going to happen that, though, isn't it? It's always going to happen it will have that outcome. It's just what it is, If it's a building block kind of thing, you've got to take it further than the building block. So you'd go circles and ellipses and whatever else, and then after that, then you would, and you've done all that, then you would start to put more into it to make it more than just circles and a constructed outline. But I'd rather just go straight to this stage. Anyway, as I said, I'm done now, so I'm going to fix a few of the tonal issues. And the odd, things like that. You see how light that looks there. That's something that needs to be addressed. It's probably what you're seeing is probably a bit too light as well. I'm not sure the exposure, the aperture on the camera is about right. Depends on the light, because I do these different times of day, so sometimes I get light through the window, sometimes I don't, and it's just fluorescent and a LED light that's illuminating it. But as I say, it does look a little bit light on that side of things, so I'm going to I'll fix that. And a little bit of a bit more of the shaping around that side. I'm looking at that shape there, right, as it meets there, and in relation to this, there isn't really much definition there. So, but it's the trajectory of those things, and that again is back to the shape thing. So you can see how it's just about implication of things, you can say. And it's that kind of drawing, that kind of thing, that I think is, for me, a much more powerful way to draw, a much more effective way to draw. You look at, as I say, look at Sargent's suggestional implication. You can see it in there. There's a lot of it, and same with Soroya. I'd put it down to the fact that his recognition of the importance of the elements that he's painting or drawing. Some things that you see, there's a typical one of, I can't remember which one is it's a charcoal, and he's drawn the face perfectly, and then the hair is just, and so it's that, and it still looks right, and it's that implication suggestion thing, but amplified for me. That's the thing. It's feeding into that. So, and you could talk about that in terms of how that affects people and what they see, and how they complete the image, because it's just implying that that's hair. What hair looks like. You finish it. You complete the picture, because he understands that will happen, but he also understands that that's not really that important. It's hair. Get over it. It's a bit of fabric. Get over it. But there's this idea that it's a deliberate it is a deliberate thing for that, from that point of view. But this idea that it's a deliberate skill that he contrived, I think it's part and parcel of the way he approached it. This is the other thing about it, where you approach something. So mindset, that's what that is. Anyway, as I say, I just need to fix some of the relationships and trajectories and things, and then sort the tones out, and yeah, I'm going to get on and do the other drawing now, the other pastel. So look out for that. I'm going to come back on and show you what the conclusion is, and then I'll point you to the step by step. In fact, I can put them on as a post. I'll put them on as a post of the stages of what I did, from the Photoshop section, the choice of image, put Photoshop section, and then the final contrived, constructed painting, drawing, whatever. Still don't know what to call oil pastels. People call dry pastels painting, so no painting involved, though, is there? I'm not sure why that is the case. But anyway. Right,